Good morning. This is Bill from Curious Cars and, very often Auto House of Naples, but again, not today. Today I am happy and pleased and privileged enough to have another one from Uncle Johnny. And, thank God for Uncle Johnny, because he has provided some of the most fun cars that we've gotten to do on this channel. And this one is going to be absolutely no exception. It's a cool and fairly crisp morning. It's not as chilly as it's been for the last few days, which is a shame, but it's good enough to keep me from complaining, which is really all that I can ask for. It's probably in the mid to high 60s. It's nice. Had a jacket on earlier, took it off, but I'm walking around, I'm not sweating, I'm not humid, and everything is fairly chipper overall. And yeah, again, that's about the most I can ask for. Animals, again, still an absolute minimum, just absolutely, well, not nothing. Today I had a rabbit commit suicide. I was driving to go pick this car up. I was driving, of all things, a GMC Acadia, and a rabbit darted out in front of me. I veered left, but the thing was so incredibly stupid that it kept going, ran underneath the rear tire, and God, yeah, when I came back down the road, I couldn't even look. It was just absolute, it was like Iwo Jima. It was just really, really bad. But, I don't understand those things. What could be so bad in Rabbitville that they want to fling themselves under the tire of a GMC? I mean, it just, call a rabbit suicide hotline or something, Try to work through it, for God's sake. Live for your family or your kids or whatever. I just don't understand why those things are always flinging themselves to their deaths in front of my car. And I wish to God they'd stop, because it's just gross. It's just absolutely gross. But look, in the spirit of keeping things short, we're going to dive directly right into this car, because I know with all the coronavirus whiskey I've been doing lately, with the Omicron. Now my friend Leif has Omicron. He got it. That miserable bastard that I'm good friends with. He borrowed my truck because he's destroyed all of his trucks. So rather than fixing any of them, he just needed to borrow mine. He filled it up with coronavirus. He's hacking and coughing, and it's disgusting. And on top of that, he had to go, like trailer front end loaders around or something. I mean, I just know I'm going to get this thing back, and it's going to be not the same truck that I loaned to him, but it's the thing you pay for when you have friends, which, frankly, I'd probably be better off without. But anyway, like I said, we're going to dive directly into this car, and it is a 1972 Chevrolet Monte Carlo. Chevrolet building a better way to see the USA. That was their new ad campaign in 1972. If someone were to rehash it now, it would probably be a maker of, armored cars or Humvees or something. I'm not sure the USA is a great place to, Look, I'm a patriot. I love this country. But if you think I'm driving through Baltimore without an armored car, you're kidding yourself. But anyway, it was what it was, and Chevrolet released this thing. How can I put it? It's the first generation of Monte Carlo. These were a series of coupes. There were originally plans that they would be 4 doors and maybe even a convertible, but none of that panned out. They just ended up all being 2-door coupes. They came from Chevrolet, obviously. They became a bread and butter car for Chevrolet. They sold a bunch of them over the years, and they were made for 6 generations. All the way from 1970 to 2007. They only took a very brief hiatus to be called the Lumina for a couple of years. The development is given credit for the development is given to a guy named Pete Estes. Pete is an epic car guy, famous in the car guy world. He was a hired gun at Pontiac back in the 50s. He was hired by a guy named Bunky Knudsen, who was another epic car guy. And Bunky, I like that. Bunky was hired to revamp Pontiac. So he called in 2 guys that he knew. One of them was Pete. The other one was a guy named John DeLorean. And the 3 of them together are credited with turning Pontiac from a maker of sort of dowdy old cars into GM's performance division. And they did it almost overnight. I mean, it was just an epic feat. And Pete Estes went on to run Pontiac a few years later after Bunky got promoted. And, it was just pretty cool times in the car industry. It really was. But anyway, look, Pete went on to run Chevrolet, and he helped develop this Monte Carlo with a designer named David Halls, another guy we all talked about going back into that mid-year Corvette stuff. And before it was going to be released, Pete moved on. He became a higher-up at GM, and they moved into his spot, that guy, John Z. DeLorean, who was around for the release of the Monte Carlo. So it's just kind of an interesting way these dudes all follow kind of the same career path. But anyway, this car was Chevy's first foray into the ever-growing personal luxury car market. And Chevy had been crying for years about not having something to directly take on the Thunderbird with. So this car was meant to do that duty. It also, of course, would compete with a horde of other cars from GM as they all started developing personal luxury coupes. And it shared the A platform special, as they called it, which was a stretched out version of the A platform. Two cars got it. This car and the Pontiac Grand Prix, which is basically its first cousin, and they were both personal luxury cars. The only difference between the A Special and the otherwise normal A platform was that they stretched out the front end. And man, stretch it out they did. I mean, this thing has 6 feet of hood at the front, everything before the firewall. It had the longest hood in GM history when it was made. I mean, it's no wonder that you could get a wide variety of engines inside of these Montes, because frankly, there was room for 2 under there. I mean, it has more wasted real estate than Detroit would even dream of putting in a car these days. It's just absolutely incredible how long that hood is. And it did well. But it shared some body panels with the Chevelle, not much. I think the deck lid's the same, the front and rear glass is the same. Everything behind the firewall is still basically Chevelle-ish, and the interior and whatnot, but in front of the hood, in front of the windshield, it's all A Special platform. So again, the longest hood in GM history, or certainly in Chevy history, which really just tells you something. The automotive press had mixed reactions to it at the time. I mean, we look at it now and you think, okay, it's a 70s car. It fairly looks normal in context, but of course at the time it was all new styling. Apparently Americans liked it because it sold extremely well right out of the gate, and did very, very well. You go back and look at some of the reviews. Car and Driver didn't like it. They didn't like it at all. They chided it for not having the same bold styling that Pontiac had brought out in the Grand Prix. They thought it looked like a blend of Buick and Oldsmobile and Cadillac, but without any real distinction, and that it had 2 headlights instead of 4 because it didn't want to encroach on their territory. They basically found it bland. Not so Road Test magazine. They found it much better looking than the Pontiac Grand Prix, which is very interesting. Grand Prix is kind of thought of as a a pretty forward-thinking car. But anyway, they found it much better looking. They thought it didn't use, and this is from them, any of the gimmickry that the Grand Prix did, any of the wasted and strange lines. They thought it was just a nice, clean, sharp look that would appeal to a vast majority of Americans. And in fact, that is true. It did. They sold almost 150,000 units the first year. And that's, by the way, more than 2 times what the Grand Prix sold. So I guess Road Test magazine had it figured out. They could have sold more, but there was a strike at GM, which led to not many Montes getting out there, which is also a shame. And you'd go to a GM lot and you couldn't find a Monte Carlo. So yeah, more shades of today in 1972. But it does show a departure, I think, the styling from the muscle car performance era that just was still going on when it was built, but, I think GM execs knew that it was on the way out. There was an SS 454 version of this car, and it would come with fender skirts if you wanted it. So this was definitely something new from Chevrolet. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm going to get my shit together, and then we're going to go over the exterior styling of this car. So bear with me one moment. All right, we're back and feeling a little bit better. So to put this car in context, let's take a quick look, very quick, at 1972 when this car was rolling the streets as a new vehicle. What did the world look like? Well, not very good, actually. There was a terrorist attack at the Munich Olympics. You had 11 Israeli athletes murdered in a big hostage standoff with airplanes and helicopters and hand grenades. It was absolutely horrible. Not to be outdone, Northern Ireland was exploding. There was the Bloody Sunday Massacre. You had bombs blowing up all over Belfast. It was just not a good time there for the Troubles. Nixon, he went to China. That was a pretty big deal at the time. You also had the Watergate break-in, and that scandal was starting to brew. Vice President Spiro Agnew resigned basically in disgrace over some criminal charges that, may or may not have been a thing, but were enough to get him to resign, and Gerald Ford took over. Governor George Wallace, you remember that guy, he was shot like that Hustler magazine guy and left paralyzed, so that was, a good way to express political disagreement at the time. You had earthquakes in Turkey, Iraq, Nicaragua that left tens of thousands of people dead. You had floods and dam collapses in the United States that left hundreds more dead. Not a very happy year. Invention-wise, you did have the first scientific calculator, digital, the handheld. That was a big deal. You had the first electronic video game, Pong, by Atari, which of course led to hordes of purple-haired snowflakes buried in their phones so they can ask each other what's up. What else do you have? It's just, it was just the time. It was just one of those things. Movies, you had The Godfather, great flick. You had The Poseidon Adventure. I think Ernest Borgnine was in that, and that's something I could watch probably 1,000 times. And Deliverance, where, of course, poor Ned Beatty, ended up getting the treatment that every New York liberal is terrified will happen to him if he forays into the South. It's kind of one of those great movies. It really is worth watching. TV, you had Hawaii Five-0, you had the Brady Bunch, and music, you had Elton John, David Bowie, ABBA, Led Zeppelin, and of course the Eagles. So all in all, 72 is thought of as a pretty shit year, which I think people who've lived through 2020 and 21 can probably sympathize with. But anyway, that's what was going on when this car was driving around, and let's just get back to this car. So, it's basically an intermediate, which means mid-size, even though it's friggin' enormous. It is an intermediate car. It's a two-door coupe with a formal roofline, not a fastback, although it does have a nice slant to it, I have to say. There are no B-pillars, unlike the Colonnade cars that would replace it in 1973. Those did have there were some thoughts that there were going to be roof strengthening laws from the federal government, and, GM wanted to get a jump on that, and that's where the Colonnade cars sort of came from back then. And the Stylade, again, was just a bit controversial. I mean, I guess the press either thought it was a little bit too vanilla, or they thought that Chevy got it just right. And apparently the public did think that Chevy got it just right. Again, you've got this enormous long hood. Over the 3 years, there were 3 different grills, and there were different headlight treatments. Some were more squircle. These are more square by 1973. The earlier grills, I think 71 had more holes in it. By 73, sorry, this is 72 model, and 70 was different again. You've got sort of these sculpted sharp creases in the side of the car that are very attractive in my mind. I think they look good. They're flowing from the front towards the back and then ending at the doors and then picking it up again for the rear quarter panels. Because it's a personal luxury coupe, it did have to have some personal luxury features, and that meant pretty good selection of chrome, although the trim on the hood doesn't go all the way back. It just ends there at the front. The Monte Carlo Knight emblem would become a thing that would go on all the way through the end. Every Monte had some version of that, or at least it did by the time Monte Carlo ended in '07. Kind of interesting, and probably doesn't mean much other than, you know, it's a fancy car. You can see it as a very almost overwrought rocker panel and, you know, lower edge treatment that goes all the way from the front to the back. It's wearing Chevrolet Rally wheels, which are absolutely beautiful. One of the most beautiful wheels ever made. It's got wheel well trim, which looks quite nice. Again, you've got the concealed wipers, you've got little vents at the back of the hood, you've got chrome around the windshield, chrome around the doors. Beautiful vinyl black top on this car with the Monte Carlo script on the C-pillar. Apparently the concept car had lift-up door handles that would come out in later cars, but not the Monte. This one still has those push-button handles on the doors, which I think look pretty nice. The rear bumper treatment, beautiful. You've got these vertical tail lamps, which I think look really nice, and they flow into the bumper and the back of the car in a way that looks, I don't know, it just looks very proper and complete. There's also a big stainless trim piece that runs between them that looks good, and more of that Knight logo there on the escutcheon for the deck lid key. It's got a very short deck lid compared to an extremely long hood, and it flows nicely into the roofline and the back angled glass. For a formal roofline, it starts to be a fastback. It really is on the way to being one, but it didn't quite make it all the way there. Side view mirror chrome looks good, and you know, again, it had to appeal to the masses. The car was made to be an affordable personal luxury coupe that would appeal to kind of pissed off conservatives. Of course, you know, all the 60s stuff was going on, the hippies and the beatniks, this sort of thing, and Woodstock and war protests, but there was still a huge portion of the populace that just wanted to support America and be happy with it, and this was the car that was built for them, and it's about as far away from being a hippie car as Tesla is from having good body fits. I mean, there's just nothing hippie about this thing, and I think they got the styling right. I think it looks really good, even if Car and Driver didn't, and to me today it just looks like a pretty appealing car. So I tell you what, I'm gonna get well, we'll do the trunk really quick. Let's do that, because then I'm gonna get my crap in there, then we're gonna go under the hood and go from there. I think I left the keys inside the car, so let me just grab those out and we'll have a look inside the trunk. I'm going to bet that it's big. I haven't actually been in here, but it's going to be big, and it is. It's actually a pretty enormous trunk, so it does lose a lot of space by having this full-size spare tire bolted to the right side of the car. I mean, you're losing a ton of space. I'm actually surprised Chevy didn't come up with a way to bolt that further up or otherwise get it out of the way, and you can certainly see why car makers moved to having smaller donut spare tires. I mean, it just takes up 25% of the trunk having that thing. And with so much wasted space under the hood, they probably should have just mounted it up there like an old, what the hell has the under hood mounted spare tire? It doesn't matter. But anyway, maybe that's where they should have put it. I see Johnny's got these things framed from Chevrolet. That looks like the original build sheet, which I'm actually happy to see because I didn't know what the rear end. It's a 273 posi traction. That's interesting, with disc brakes, 404 barrel turbo high. Yeah, man, this is a very well-equipped car, which we'll get into as we go. But typical Johnny, he's got all that stuff in there that that gives sort of the history of the car. And the man is a total purist. I mean, an absolute purist. I'm not going to close that because I got to put my crap in there. Oh God! And then I'm going to bang up Johnny's gonna see that and hate it. The car is all original paint, and I noticed up here it's got some flaws up in the front headlight area. This is a guy who would rather leave it original and flawed than even think about painting it. I mean, the guy's an absolute nut. I was showing him a car I'm going to look at this weekend, and he pointed out that it had aftermarket AC. It's like a 65 Buick. And, you know, the AC looks fine to me, but he was making little vomit emoticons on the text. Oh my God, it's disgusting. So you talk about a guy that just hates anything that isn't factory original. Even a few little flaws along the rocker panel and the paint there and stuff, but you really do have to appreciate the way this guy just absolutely needs the car to be the way it came, up to the point he wouldn't do even a minor repair to, you know, change or add paint to the car. So anyway, a pretty neat cat. I'm gonna get my crap in the trunk, then we're gonna open the hood, have a look under there, get inside the car and go for a drive. All right, let's have a look at this thing. You can see at the back it's got dual exhaust, looks nice, has a nice rumble to it. I presume we're going to find a gas door, yep, behind that license plate, as was the style at the time. And I love also the way the vinyl top is raised a bit off the body panel going up to the roof, and you've got the red in there. But let's see if we can lift the then longest GM hood, Chevy hood. Not having luck so far. Didn't pop up high enough. Oh, there it goes. Oh God. All right, let's see if I can find a release in here. It's got to be somewhere. I swear I should do this before. Test it out so I know what the hell I'm doing. All right, where the hell is the damn hood release? Come on now. Oh, maybe it's a second pull on that thing. Oh, it is. Okay. Oh my God. Holy shit. Yeah, all right, there it is. Look at the length of that hood when it's up in the air like that. It is insane. I mean, those hood hinges have to be able to lift a battleship. Good Lord. Look at the length of the fan shroud. I mean, 2 or 3 feet of this car arrives in a different time zone before you do. It's just absolutely insane. And of course, with underhood space like that, and by the way, that is where the whole A body was stretched out. It's all from the firewall forward. You could have just about any engine you wanted, and that's why there were so many in these cars. They had 2 and 4 barrel Turbo Fire 350s. You could get those. They had a Turbo Fire 400, which was a small block. Then what this is, which is a Turbo Jet 400, which is a big block. It's actually a 402. And you could also get the 454 across all 3 model years, even when they dumped the SS in 1973. So, 73, sorry, in 72, they dumped, anyway, 70, 71, 72 were the year. I don't know if I've said other shit as this video has gone on, but those were the years for this first gen Monte. So if I said 73 on something incorrectly earlier, I apologize. Anyway, in 72, they had dumped the SS version, but you could still get the 454. There were also a variety of transmissions. They had the Power Glide 2-speed automatic. You had 3-speed manuals. You had 4-speed manuals, and of course Turbo Hydra 350s and 400s. So basically, in the Monte, you could order any engine that suited your needs. There was a host of options. A lot of these cars were fairly well equipped. This one is no different. It's got you can see air conditioning there. Love the Chevy orange paint and the foot-wide valve covers. There's just nothing to me like a Chevy big block. I think it's one of the most awesome engines of all time, and I love seeing one under the hood of this thing. Just absolutely terrific. So everything looking really good under there. Makes me wonder if this part of it hasn't been restored, because if it hasn't, it's absolutely epic. It's just really, really nice under the hood of this car, and everything looking the way it's supposed to. Nice. Let's have a look inside. All right, inside, again, a host of different setups and options. This one has a bench seat. You could get buckets and a center console if you wanted. Probably most people opted for the bench, as that was the desire at the time. So it's essentially a 6-passenger car, which is awesome. Your Canadians in the back. Let's have a look back there. There's a tire gauge. Yeah, they're going to be pretty chipper. There's expanses of black vinyl, got little buttons into it. You know, again, part of that personal luxury coupe thing to, jazz up the inside. You got pretty amazing footroom for a 2-door. You got a nice big package shelf where you'd be able to store some infants or toddlers. And, this is before they're retractable. This is sort of when shoulder belts were a new thing, so they're almost an afterthought up there on top of the headliner. And just a GM parts bin dome light, the same one actually in my 79 Firebird, so they'd been using that for years. And, of course, the split bench works great. Door panel, again, they had to dress it up a little bit. This was a personal luxury car. It was going to be more expensive than your Malibus and Chevelles. You got little buttons in it and stuff. You got these nice big pull bars there. You've got a little armrest with the door handle. You can see this one came with power windows, which, frankly, weren't very much opted for at the time in a variety of cars. So it's nice to see power windows in this. You've got a remote mirror on the driver's side, and of course your little door lock here. Let's hop in. All right, you could get, full gauges in this car. This one doesn't have it. You've got idiot lights for the temp oil and alternator. Where a tack might go, you have a giant fuel gauge. You have your speedometer, odometer in front of you, and then a big clock off to the right. So apparently you couldn't avoid having expanses of this fake wood. Car and Driver despised it. They thought it looked terrible. Road Test Magazine, the opposite. They liked it. They thought it looked pretty good. And again, I guess the American public agreed with Road Test Magazine. This has a tilt steering column, befitting of a personal luxury coupe. It's got a horn with, I think you could get a 4-prong wheel as an option. This has a 2-prong wheel. Nice big proper horn. You got your light switch, you got your wipers. Here's your air conditioning setup, your giant 70s cigarette lighter, which guaranteed people used. God, very lightly in this car. That's shocking. A lot of cigarettes were smoked in Monte Carlos. You've got an AM/FM radio. I presume it might be a stereo in this car because you got 2 speakers in the back, so that's something. And of course, an ashtray for people at the time, and then a glove box for a nice little place to put some guns or knives or drugs or whatever else you needed in 1972. So anyway, let's fire this thing up and go for a drive. Up top, nothing. You got sun visors. Neat to see the engine starting procedure sticker still there on that one. No cocaine mirror on that one because it ain't the 80s yet. Let's fire it up. Man, and I mean, if there is anything that sounds as sweet as a Chevy big block firing to life, I don't know what it is. The snapping and the cracking. I mean, that just sounds like pure American torque to me. I don't care if the car's fast or not, as long as it sounds like that. The expanse of the hood is insane. I mean, this is what it was like to be in a Cadillac Eldorado. There's 6 feet of hood moving out in front of you. You can see creased fenders there on the left and right. I believe you could get light monitoring on these, but it's kind of rare. Interesting that there's no real ridge in the center of the hood, just that little chrome strip at the very far tip. And it just makes this whole hood look big and flat and enormous, even from the vista of the driver's seat. Power steering, of course, power disc brakes on this one, AC. I don't see any cruise control, but obviously this is a pretty well-equipped car. And man, it just has a very nice little rumble. Another thing the magazines noted was that the shocks and springs were set for cruising and bumps and not for performance handling of any kind. And that is 100% true. You know, the SS version did stiffen it up a little bit, but again, you could get fender skirts on the damn thing, so it really was not meant for high performance driving or cornering of any kind. It was just meant for cruising the boulevard. Let's give it a little bit of a shot, see if we can get some tire spin here. Yeah, a little bit. Bogged down. I don't think this car gets driven very much. Probably needs a good Italian tune-up. And the turbohydra shifts as it should. But with a 273 rear end, you're not really going to get much of that anyway. This thing is geared for the highway. If it had, you know, I think you could get a 331 or something optionally. With that, it would have a lot more pep off the line, even with the 308. With the 273, you can run 150 miles an hour probably, but you're not going to get there in any kind of rapid pace. It's got variable power steering, which is just the lightest touch. It's one of these drive with your pinky kind of cars. And what a cruiser, man. I tell you what, driving this thing, I mean, Uncle Johnny really does find this. This feels like a car you would have found on the car lot in like 1976. What's it have? 80,000 miles on it. Not super low, but, you know, super low for a 72 model. Those are original. And obviously it was pretty well maintained. And what a terrific boulevard cruiser. Big time over-assisted power brakes, over-assisted steering, automatic. You know, this is Chevrolet's version of a Cadillac. And I presume that's why the hell it sold so well. With that gearing, it just winds out. You get that deep baritone from the exhaust pipes that only a Chevy big block is going to make. And it's just an absolute joy to drive down the road. Get a little bit of cowl shake, which of course is common, and leads me to have absolute terror every time thinking the hood's going to blow up on me. I just love vintage GM cowl shake. Vibration in the wheel. Yeah, you know, I mean, I can see why they sold so many of these to that buyer at the time who was just looking for, you know, something akin to the Eldorado, but without the big price tag. It was a terrifically conservative car. What the hell are they signaling with that? Are they blowing out their mask? See people driving around with masks on. It just looks friggin' bizarre to me. Absolutely bizarre. Like one of those 80s futuristic movies with, you know, Emilio Estevez in it or something. It's just strange. They're fine. Well, look, anyway, there it is. I'm not going to keep rambling on. This car is not for sale. It is one of Johnny's collection cars, not anything to do with Auto House of Naples. So if you call them, they won't have a clue what you're talking about. Barely talk to these guys anymore. And there it is. I appreciate everything from Uncle Johnny. I love having these cars. The guy better refresh his collection, man. We've gone through quite a few of them. He needs to come up with some more if we're going to keep going. And again, this was a 1972 Monte Carlo Chevrolet. Just a terrific, nice, original car. And a lot of fun to drive and cruise around. So thanks for having a look. Really appreciate it. Gonna try and get some more fun stuff this weekend. I have a little field trip. And there won't be a highway drive at the end of this since I gotta go the other way to bring it back to Johnny's shop. And we'll go from there. So thanks again for having a look. Really appreciate it. We'll see you with the next one. Take care.